Hi everybody, my name's Chad. I'm an alcoholic. So Julie and I decided to split this one up a little bit, and what we're going to do is I am going to talk a little bit about the mechanics of 10 and 11 and kind of come out of the book a little bit, and then Julie's going to, in the 5 minutes that I leave her, I don't know what she's going to do. So I heard a guy say this is 10, 11, and 12 is 90% of the program, but you can't tap into the 90 till you do the 10. Mm-hmm. You know, in the third step it talks about staying close to God and doing His work. And I can't stay close to God until I get close to God, and I can't get close to God until I get unblocked. And this process of steps 1 through 9 is about getting unblocked, and then 10's kind of a continuation of that. And it's interesting in this first on page 84 in this first paragraph on step 10, it uses the word continue 4 times. And the way I look at it, it's kind of like this, like if I went to Shannon and said, "Hey, bud, I got to do a 10th step," and Shannon said, "Okay, on what?" And I said, "On the first 28 years of my life." Well, what you might say is, you know what, let's break it down a little bit. How about you write some inventory on resentments and fears and conduct, and then read it to me, and then take that to God in meditation, and then go out and make amends for that stuff. And that's kind of what this is 10 is a continuation of that process of 4 through 9. It's keeping things clean. And there's a difference in 10 and 11. I love the way I heard Mark say one time that the difference in 10 and 11 is kind of like if you find yourself on the railroad tracks and a train's coming, now's not the time to figure out how you got on the tracks in the first place. A 10th step is a quick thing. Let's get undisturbed as quickly as possible. Let's clean it up as quickly as possible. And then sit down with pen and paper tonight when you do your review, and we can take a better look at, how this thing happened in the first place. And I know that when I first went through this process, the 10th step was something you do at night, and the 11th step was something you do in the morning. Because the first time I went through the process, there wasn't a big book involved. And when you read the steps off the wall, it kind of looks like that. And really what the 10th step kind of looks like is I just go on and live my life. And then when I step on somebody's toes, they wake me up. And then I clean it up. And when I read it out of the big book, it's asking me something. First off, the 10th step is what I do throughout the day. The 11th step is at night and in the morning. They're a separate process that work together really well. And what I want to learn to do is practice the 10th step from a state of wakefulness with an awakened spirit. And what that looks like is learning to watch, which is a whole new concept for someone like me. I am my thoughts. I am my feelings. I'm 100% identified with those things. Some of us are different in that aspect. I'm a guy who's identified more with my thoughts. Julie may be identified more with her feelings, but either way, that ain't me. That's not real. I'm the one who's experiencing the feelings. I'm the one who's experiencing the thoughts. I'm the one who sees this stuff. That's who I really am. And to watch is to tap into a higher level of consciousness. So isn't it crazy to think, how many people out there in the world that think that AA is just about getting sober? And then you go to one of these things and you're like, wow, there's a lot more to it than that, There's a lot more to it than that, because what we're really doing here, we're tapping into the solution to all problems. All problems that humans experience in this world can be solved through this process we're talking about, through this spiritual awakening, one way or another. I'm not saying everybody's got to read the big book and follow the instructions. This is just one method. I call this the accelerated program. This is the accelerated program. You actually take a bottom of the barrel, scum of the earth guy like me, not you, like me, and have a spiritual awakening and actually contribute to society, through this process. So it's a lot more than staying sober. So what am I doing here? I'm watching my thought life. I'm watching my emotional state. I'm watching my behavior. It gives me some things here to watch for. It says to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And Charlie would say the 4 things we watch for and 4 things we do. And I like to look at this like I actively watch. I'm trying to actively watch for these things. When I worked at this school, there was one teacher. He bugged me a little bit. I wrote inventory on him a couple times, but anyway, in this kind of school where it's a little gangsters and drug dealers, there's a lot going on in the cafeteria in the morning for breakfast. It's big business, right? And so we teachers have duty stations. Sometimes I'm at the metal detector searching. It was cool. So it was an interesting school to work in. But some mornings I'd be in the cafeteria. What's going on? During breakfast. And I remember this guy that I'm referring to. When he was on duty in the cafeteria, what he would do is he'd have his books laid out on the table and his laptop up, and he'd be creating lesson plans for the day. But I was told, I'm a rule follower. I was told to do something different. I was told to get up and walk around and engage the kids. And when I was thinking about that one time, and to me that's the difference in maybe passively watching and actively watching. Like I'm really watching, because you know what? Something's happening in that cafeteria. Somebody's passing a pill under the table. There's likely somebody's going to OD that they have to call an ambulance for somebody. There's somebody that's got beef with somebody else, and something's going to happen later on throughout the day. And there's somebody's dad went to jail last night. Somebody's dad got out of jail last night. And that was really bad, or whatever. There's things going on, and I'm going to engage these kids and find out and see what's going on. That's the kind of watching I want to bring into the 10th step. I want to, throughout the day, watch with curiosity. What's going on here? Not judgment, with curiosity. What's going on up here right now? Where'd this thought come from? Trace it back. What did you think before that? Anybody ever tried that? Like there are times I go back like 2 thoughts and I'm like, I have no idea where this came from. This thing's just running. But the crazy thing is, if I'm asleep to it, it's running my life. If I'm awake, it's not running my life. I can actually live by God, reliance, and principle if I'm awake. I love that. I love how Julie said that. I got to remember. But yeah, if I'm not practicing self-examination, this thing's running my life. This self-driven identification with thoughts. So when these things crop up, not if, but when, I get into action, proper use of the will. What do? Let's fix the problem. No, that's not what I do. What do? First thing I do is pray. It's an act of surrender. Prayer is an act of surrender. Next thing I do is discuss this with somebody. Let's get transparent. It's an act of humility to really get transparent about what it is that's going on. Let's clean it up. If there's harm's done, let's clean it up. And then we'll turn our thoughts. What a practice that is. Mark would talk about taking one word out of the 10th step and practicing it for 6 months. Take this word, write it on your hand, put it on a note card, sticky notes, wherever, and really try to work with this. This concept of turn's interesting. I've got this in my hand, and I don't want it in my hand. I just drop it, hands empty, we're good to go. That's not how my mind works. If I've got an intrusive thought in my mind, okay, I'm going to drop this thought. Try that. Right? Let's just do a test. Right now, whatever you do, don't think about the Statue of Liberty. But I can turn the thoughts. I can turn my attention elsewhere. It takes practice, but it is possible. And it is something I can get better at if I practice it over time. Buddhists, turn your attention to your breath. Christians, turn your attention to God. The big book says turn your thoughts to someone you can help. It's very practical, right? But whatever it is, turn it away from the problem. As a human being, I have a superpower. We have, in the animal kingdom, we have this prefrontal cortex that's way bigger than any other animal. And there's a special power in there. And that power is, if I place my attention on something, I energize it. So here's what that can do for you. If you've got a problem and you want it to get bigger, think about it. It's a special gift. I do it all the time. I'm going to move on over here on this next page. I love page 85. They give us some great promises here on 84 and 85. But on this next page, this is kind of the spirit of the 10th step. And I'm just going to read a little bit here, but it says, it talks about how we get these gifts, these 10-step promises, as long as we stay in fit spiritual condition. I'm kind of into, I just ate a piece of cake and now I'm saying this, I'm kind of into, fit physical condition, right? What that means is don't eat the cake, yeah. But if I want to stay physically fit, I have to do things. I actually have to do stuff. You know, I would love it if I could be spiritually fit. You know, I'm reading The Power of Now years ago. Anybody ever read that? You know, and I read, it's the same. I love Michael Singer. I'm reading The Untethered Soul, and I'm reading it, and it's like such a clear understanding of the problem. I'm like, I get it, man. That's me. It's and then it's like, okay, well, then what do we do? Just live in the now. Okay. That's all you got? Just live in the now? Or with Michael Singer, just let it go. There's a whole book, Letting Go, Let Go. I'm like, I listened to the audio book on a drive from Oklahoma back up here. Dawkins, Richard, I don't know, somebody like that. This book, Letting Go. I'm like, how do you let go? You know, where's that part? There are things that we do to stay spiritually fit, and this, one of the things I love so much about AA is it gives us an understanding, a clear understanding of the problem, then it gives us a solution, and it doesn't stop there. Then it gives us a program of action on how to get to that solution. That's the beauty of this thing. When those three things came together, it changed the lives of alcoholics for the rest of eternity. A program of action. So if I want to stay spiritually fit, there are things I have to do. If I want to stay physically fit, I got to get enough sleep, Shannon. I got to eat right. I got to keep the toxins out of my body. I got to exercise, drink plenty of water, right? If I want to stay spiritually fit, it doesn't just mean feel good. My level of spiritual fitness doesn't necessarily mean that I just feel good. Sometimes when I feel good, you know why it is? It's because my arrangements are staying put. Things are going my way. I can tell you all about God when everything's going the way Chad wants it to go. Being spiritually fit, in my experience, is much more related to what I've been doing and how awake I am based on that. They often are correlated, how I feel and how spiritually fit I am. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but it's not always. So what I have to do to stay spiritually fit? Write the inventory, make the amends, help people, pray and meditate. You know, do the things we do here. It says it's easy to let up on the spiritual. Finally, something's easy. It's easy to let up. It's easy to let up and rest on what we already did. You know, and that's so. The longer you stay sober, the more gifts of sobriety we experience, the easier that gets. We're headed for trouble if we do. Alcohol is a subtle foe. It sneaks up on us. We're not cured. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Welcome to steps 10 and 11. Let's maintain this spiritual condition, this spiritual awakening that has happened through this process of actually getting honest with somebody, getting honest with ourselves, and starting to go out and clean up the past. And here's the spirit. Here's the spirit of this. Every day is a day we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve Thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It's the proper use of the will. I could spend a lifetime dissecting half of a paragraph, trying to learn how to live by that. This word constantly always bugs me because it means like all the time. All the time? I'd prefer to run a quick sprint and then relax for a while. It's interesting. It says, what thoughts must go... What thoughts must go with me constantly? How can I best serve God? God's will, not mine, be done. A couple pages later, it says we constantly remind ourselves we're no longer running the show. Let's add a constantly in here. We'll turn all the way back to, I believe, page 20. Our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depends upon our constant thought of others and how we may help meet their needs. So how about this for constantly? I'm not running the show. How can I best serve God and how can I help others meet their needs? Live by that. And I don't care what your circumstances are, you'll have a happy life. And the goal of all these mechanics that sometimes people don't want to hear about is to be able to live that way as best I can. And I can promise you the times in my life, the whole 15 total minutes of it, no, the times in my life when I've lived that kind of constantly have been the most freeing times in my life. You know, to try to live by that. And then it goes on to talk about some really strange concepts here. It mentions things like thought life, like enter the world of spirit, like developing God conscious, this sixth sense, this vital sixth sense. You know, vital means necessary for life. That means it's necessary as an alcoholic. For me to live, I've got to develop a sixth sense. Well, it's not actually number 6. It's just saying, all this is saying is to be able to sense this other world, this world of the Spirit, to be able to sense it. And I had an experience a couple of summers ago that came on me really quickly. We were at this meditation retreat, and we're doing this walking meditation, and I had this experience with it. And there were like 1,900 people at this retreat, and I am a very judgmental alcoholic. I know it's just me. And the interesting thing is these two things go hand in hand. I judge myself harshly and I judge you harshly. I can't have one without the other. You know, I beat the crap out of myself, and then in my mind I beat you up too. You know, and I just can't believe how self-centered you all are. Right, Julie?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know we're here. Yeah. That's why I laugh at you so much. I so understand. Oh my God, it's just rough. Yeah, and at this retreat, I have this experience in this meditation, and I'm like kind of crying. But here, let me just tell you what I experienced. The best way I can describe it is this way: my heart opened. I'm not an open heart kind of guy. It doesn't happen that much for me. You know, I remember it happening when I was falling in love with Julie in the beginning. You know, we were talking on the phone till 2:00 in the morning. I'm getting up at 5 so I can make it to the gym before work, and I wasn't tired. The heart was open, right? It was such a beautiful experience. Of course, I'm depending on her to keep it open, so that's where the trouble comes in, right? But what a true spiritual experience is, the heart's just open. There's no reason. It's just open. I experience love, not from someone, not for someone. I just experience love. The heart must be open to experience love. I experienced a sense of gratitude for nothing. I didn't make a gratitude list. I just felt grateful. I experienced wholeness. I'd read about wholeness. I didn't really know what it meant until then. And what I experienced was that I didn't need anything. I had everything that I needed. There was nothing else I needed in that moment. If I can live there, there's no self-will, because everything's fine. I don't need to change anything. And I knew when I had that experience, I knew that it wasn't going to last. And then my next thought that followed that is, the reason I said judgment is because I was walking around for the next few days with 1,900. People that go to meditation retreats are weird. And I'm one of them. And I'm walking around surrounded by all these other people, and I'm not judging anyone. Whoa, that is so freeing. Don't worry, it's back. But the next thought that I had was, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get free of whatever it is that keeps me from being like this all the time. And that's what this practice is. And I remember my first sponsor, he was catching a lot of heat because it's this guy that moved from Las Vegas to Oklahoma City, and he's, telling people, and they're not wanting to hear what he has to say. And I remember he said to me, he was catching some heat for taking this so seriously, and he said to me one time, he said, "Chad, I take my recovery very seriously." And that doesn't sound very spiritual to me. It doesn't sound like much fun. But then he said, the reason I take my recovery very seriously is so I don't have to take my life so seriously. And that is a beautiful statement for a guy like me. My default setting is, this is serious. And I don't want to live that way. Back here on page 62, it says, I'm a victim of the delusion. I can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if I manage well. This world is the physical, material world. If I manage this world, everybody in this world, and all this, if I manage all this well, if I manage my body well, if I manage everything of the physical, if I manage this well, then I'll be okay. That's a delusion. But here we're talking about the world of the Spirit. That's different. It's something new for me. There are different laws that govern this world of the Spirit. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. Or the other way around. I don't know. I get it backwards. Whatever.
That's right.
Yeah. So through this process, we develop this ability to sense this. We begin to be inspired. We can sense this energetic body that rules this physical body. Then we move on into step 11 and this practice. I love how he says we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. I need those. I don't know what I'm doing here. Did anybody come into AA good at meditation? You ever get the response like, I don't meditate, I'm not good at it. Of course you're not good at it. Nobody comes in here good at meditation. You know, we got a crazy mind. That's why I drank. That's one of the reasons why. Yeah, so this takes practice. I need a set of instructions, the proper attitude and work at it. You know, you can just imagine if I've never played golf and it's like, I'm going to learn to play golf. That sucked. I'm not doing that anymore. That doesn't work. I got to get out there and have a good, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to work hard at it. I'm going to try and stay with it. And I believe we get better at it. I believe we get better at this practice. And what happens is I get better at this practice, then like my first sponsor said, I can take my life less seriously. The definition of meditate in the old dictionary and this is interesting to me, it says, one definition is to contemplate or ponder. Another one is to intend or plan. The third one is to dwell in thought or reflect. There's a synonym to consider. Now I'm going to be coming back to that because it tells me different types of prayer and meditation. I sponsor a guy in a monastery and he prays 2 hours every night. And I said, what do you do for 2 hours of prayer every night? When he told me what he does, I was like, that sounds a lot like meditation. And I hear it said sometimes that prayer's talking to God and meditation's listening. I think that oversimplifies it. I think there's all different forms of it laid out right here on these 2 pages. And I'm going to run through them just real quick here. One is a reflection. That's what we do at night. We reflect. What blocked me from this power today? Okay. Then I'm going to ask for corrective measures. That's ask and listen. You could call that all kinds of things. It's another form of prayer and meditation. To ask and to listen. They were real big on this in early AA. On awakening, I consider my plans for the day and set an intention. That's another form of prayer and meditation. Actually, in the dictionary from my old home group, when we looked up the word meditate, one of the examples, use it in a sentence, said the general meditates the day's battle. That's pretty cool, right? That's a form of meditation, to consider my plans for the day. What I do now, I used to say, God, direct my thinking, divorce it from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. And over time, that prayer changed in many different ways. Today, it's a chakra-clearing meditation. This old country boy does a chakra-clearing meditation before I plan the day. You know, it's kind of cool. So I want to get as clear as I can, then start looking at my plans for the day. 2 things come up when I'm planning the day. The first one that's listed here is indecision. I don't know what to do. It tells me exactly what to do when I don't know what to do. I ask God for intuitive thought or inspiration. Relax and take it easy. Don't struggle. Learn to listen. Learn to listen. Relax. Know that God's there. Know that I'm going to get some help through this process. The next thing that comes up are potential problems. I'm going to be picking up the kid from the ex-wife today. I'm going to have a meeting at work, business meeting at the home group tonight. I know what's coming. Let's pray. What do I need so I can show up well in those situations? And then it goes on to talk here about adding in additional things. The 11th step in AA is a complete process. It's so cool because it's a complete process. But it also, at the same time, it just opens the door for all kinds of spiritual practice. I came in here, I'm not one of those guys that had like a resentment against God because I grew up in the church. I came in here with the idea that all spiritual stuff was stupid. I don't care if it's the Great Spirit or if it's meditation or what. I just thought it was all so silly because I'm a neck up kind of guy. And if you get what I'm saying, Santa Claus and God right on the same level. And by the way, my mom told me not too long ago that I never believed in Santa Claus because it wasn't very logical. Yeah. I was like, the whole chimney thing, there's no way. Come on. And there's a whole timing issue here. It's not gonna. And there's time zones. I mean, please. It's silly. Nobody lives at the North Pole. I have gone on so much adventure in spiritual practice in the last 22 years. Julie and I have been to a sweat lodge. We've sat in a circle in a kirtan chanting Hare Krishna. I've been to Bible studies, meditation classes. Been to 2 years of group therapy. Who saw that one coming? And so many of those things, if I do those things in addition to this process, it's a beautiful spiritual experience. We get in a little trouble, though, when we do those things instead of. That's a slippery slope for an alcoholic. But when I do those things in addition to this, it opens the door for what I like to call the greatest adventure of all. And that's that adventure of spiritual practice and spiritual growth. So, it's all yours, Jay. Wow, that's got to go way down.
No, a little bit higher.
No, it's 5'4", not 5'2".
Unbelievable.
How's that?
That's good. I think. Julie, I'm an alcoholic.
Thank you, Julie.
Chad, how about that? Hi, guys. If you're still here, you're the real deal. If you're still here listening to this. I think it's worth noting, I don't think we've mentioned it today yet, but has anyone noticed that Shannon and I have the same shirt on?
Yes.
Okay, good. It does say Zen Bitch Slap. We had a magical weekend together a couple weeks ago in Ventnor with Paul Hederman. And Shannon and Nicoletta have opened a new world for me in my sobriety. And I think that the connection that we have is it's really, really meaningful to me, and it's brought me to the next level. There was a time not long ago when I wouldn't have gotten up here and not talked about the mechanics of the work, because I felt deeply that it was my responsibility to lay out to you how we work these steps, and I still feel that way. And the reason I thought that was because I had never followed a direction in my entire life until I was 30 years old. And I'm not kidding. I started at the end of things and tried to work back. I couldn't follow a recipe. Nothing. Following the directions of anything was inconceivable to me. That's not how I roll. I do things my way. I don't even consider it. So when I discovered this program of action and it was laid out for me, and I actually followed the directions, not what I thought or how I felt, and I had an experience with this God that I didn't believe in, my world was revolutionized. And what I was told was that you get to keep this if you carry this message immediately, not at 2 years sober, not when I'm ready. There's no, I'm ready. I'm ready today. So I thought that really important. But Chad did a really great job of that. Those are the mechanics. That's actually how to do it. That's it, right? But what happens is from that, we open a door. There's a meditation teacher that I love, and he says, there's a door, feel your connection to it. The veil, we have a filter that doesn't always allow us to see. The veil is thin, guys. There's a world of the spirit. It's right there. Those divine coincidences, it's unbelievable. And I stand up here today and I can't believe it. That I stand up here and talk about God and the experiences I've had. And I just want to tell a story. And what I was inspired by what Shannon said about 10 and 11 being a byproduct of 9. And so I want to talk about that and just take us out of steps 10 and 11 with this story. I hope my voice holds up. The vessel is... I want to start off by saying one of the gifts of this program today is that I have an unbelievable relationship with my dad. I want to tell you about my relationship with my dad. I am free from all resentment. I've experienced radical forgiveness for deep hurts and traumas. I feel connected to him all the time. And he has found a way to get free of his suffering. And I walk in that. And that's a gift of the 11th step because of the rest of the work. And I'm going to talk about that. And the only catch to that is he's dead. But I got to experience that state for the last 2 days of his life. And I experience it today. And I get the relationship with him today that I always wanted. That's all I ever wanted, was to experience a connection with him my whole life. It manifested in every area. And that's not why I'm alcoholic. I have 2 sisters. They're not alcoholic. We were all raised by the same father. I'm outnumbered by non-alcoholics, right? But it had a tremendous impact on me, and I chased it for my life. And I'm free of that today, and here's why. And before I go into why, the other night I was watching the sunset with my niece, I have the 6-year-old Guru too. And we were watching the sunset, and we were having these deep conversations. She's so cool. We just talk about the coolest stuff. And we were talking about the sunset, and she said, God and Pop-Up are working together. Now, my niece isn't religious. There's no God. There's no church. There's no talk about God in the house. And she said, God and Pop-Up are working together. And I said, really? And she said, yeah. And I said, what do you mean? She said, that's how the sunset, they work together to make that sunset. And I said, really? I said, how do you know that? And she said, well, I saw them. As matter of fact as could be. I know this child, Her and I get to we're having the same experience. But the thing is, she's so close to source as a child, right? I look in her eye, and I go into the well of she's so close to source. And my work to get to a place like that is to become unblocked by self, so the veil can be lifted and I can experience something of God. When we were at that meditation retreat where Chad was walking around feeling free of judgment, around 1,900 people, we were there together. And when I was there, I knew intuitively that I was preparing for battle. And my life had just started to turn. I was coming out of that vicious spell of untreated alcoholism. I'd made the couple of amends that I thought I could never make, never get up here and share this horrific story. I did some bad things in AA. I mean, some bad things. I hurt some people. And so I was coming out on the other side of that, and I wasn't all the way there, but the experience was happening, and I felt something starting to move, and we're at this retreat, and I know I'm preparing for battle. I can't explain it, I just know. And we get back, and he goes to Oklahoma for a couple months to spend with his family, and I'm with my mom, and my dad is dying. And so I'm getting up every morning long before everybody else, and I'm going into my morning step 11. I'm going into On Awakening. I'm dropping into the body. I'm doing what I do. I'm doing some energy work. I'm doing some prayer. And I'm really serious about it because this is a really big deal. I'm seeking that conscious contact, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. I don't have the power to walk my father home. It's too hard. Not on my own power. But what happened is I would lead those meditations and I would walk in with my head held high, and my mom's a wreck and she's drinking and everyone's hysterical, my sister, and no one can cope. And I'm in charge of the morphine, of course. My whole life was leading to this role, and I'm like, I got this. I got it. There's going to be no more suffering in this house. Right? We're doing this. Everyone's like, don't give him to me. I'm like, we're doing this now. He's screaming in pain. It was not a good scene, guys. It was not a scene that I'm capable of going through. Right? And so we're doing this, and then I very organically make amends to him. I made amends to him when I first got sober, and it was mechanical. I'm well trained AA. I've followed all these. I know these instructions, and I did it when I felt nothing, with the promise and the faith that experiences were coming. That's what I was taught, and that's what I did in AA. And there's been years in AA where I feel emptiness around these mechanics. And then one day, there's a shift. I have come to believe that is always what's coming, and that my thoughts and feelings are no judge of anything. And so I sit with him, and I don't know, I'm moved. I realize that it's time, and I sit down and I say, I start off by saying, Dad, when we went to Big Bend, Texas, together, that was the best thing I've ever done. And he moaned and he said, oh yeah. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but I think I alluded to it, but my relationship with my father was deeply fractured. And I don't want to get up here and say a lot about him, but he was incapable of a lot of things and love, and it was dark. So I opened the conversation with that, and he couldn't talk very much. He just kind of moaned, and then I went into this conversation, and there was a connection, and there was a radical shift from the bottom up. I have no words to explain it. Right? I've made many amends, and I laid my head on his chest for a minute, and my father and I didn't do physical contact, so that was an unusual event. I would have felt deeply violated by that type of physical contact with him before, but there was something dissolved. I can't explain it. And and then that night, my aunt is in the kitchen, and everyone's neurotic and hysterical in my family. And I'm listening to her talk to my mom, and she's crying, and she's saying, my dad, her brother was he was abused growing up. Our father was cruel to him. This was not new information. And this is after the amends. But in that moment, something started to shift in me, and I realized that the other was perhaps spiritually sick, just like ourselves. Look, I'm an inventory warrior. I know I can lay out all the old ideas. I'm at the third column. I really know how to go deep into the inventory process because I've needed to stay sober. There's just been a lot more layers for me always, and I have to keep going deeper and deeper, and that's what I've done. But I've never actually had the lived experience of that line the way I did then, and it came after the amends. It came after that conversation with him. And I told my sisters that I had had that experience, and they went and made amends to him. They cleaned things up with him. They're not in the program, but they had a goodbye conversation with him. And then my sister's ex-husband, they were in the middle of a terrible divorce. He came over and did the same. And then the next couple days, I just walked him home, and I put on music, and we listened to our favorite songs, and it was Bob Dylan and Tom Petty and all this music he's raised me on, and he was barely conscious. But guys, he started playing the instruments with his mouth. I can't even. It was not of this world. It was not of this world. It was the most bizarre and amazing. And my mom, who's not spiritual, she's like, "What's going on here?" And then he would the whole thing, and he was laying there, and then in the end, he had his arms up like this. They were like in the shape of wings, and he just kept putting them back there. I don't know why. And when he died, I was holding his hand, and we were listening to "Learning to Fly" by Tom Petty. It was his favorite song. And then he was gone. He was gone. And I had gotten to experience, there was victory in the end. I experienced tremendous victory of perfect peace with that man the last couple days and every moment since. That is the gift of the 11th step. That is not something I'm capable of on my own. That is not I'm a skeptic. I'm like, yeah, you have a perfect relationship. He's dead. That's fantasy stuff, right? That's make-believe land. But here's what I recognize about God today, and I talked about it in the second step, and I think I don't know if I finished my story about it, but what I know about myself is when I become too interested, too invested in the ultimate truth about the universe, I'm straying into a little bit of trouble, right? And I have to keep the humility to know that that information might not be accessible to me. And the thing is, when I work this program, I don't care if it's the placebo effect. People always blow off they're like, it's just a placebo. Just the placebo effect. You believed something into existence and it became real. That is the most magical. Does it get more mystical than that? We are so powerful. I don't think we're taught that we're powerful. I think we're raised to be small, and no one did it on purpose. They were raised to be small. Play small. Get your little job. Stay in your little job. Don't ever not have health benefits. You don't know anything about your own body. Always take it to a doctor. I go to doctors. I'm not saying, but you know what I mean? Like keep it. We are We are infinite. The mind can only think in linear, so it gets confused, right? And it perceives reality in a way that's, when we're trapped in that construct, that's painful. And the narratives is, it could be like a Wednesday. I wake up and it's like, you don't have any kids, you're going to die alone. Who's going to take care of you? Nobody. No one's going to take. What are you going to do? You're going to get stuck in a nursing home? No, you're going to kill yourself before you go in there. And no one's going to be able to stop you, And then the next thought will be, well, at least I didn't have kids just for them to take care of me when I got older. Like some other people. Like now I'm a martyr. Like that's not why I didn't have kids. It didn't work out, but I'll twist anything. This is my mind. This is what I'm up against, guys, every day, right? These kind of, and it's like, whoa, and they feel so real. My body responds. When I tap into this 11th step, I wake up to the truth. The veil is lifted. It's unbelievable. I have to keep doing it to keep getting that, but I'm telling you guys, this stuff is actually unlimited. There's so much more on the other side if you keep going. Thank you guys so much. It's been a great day.
All right, we'll go on a break and we'll reconvene at 4:15 and wrap up the day.